Have you ever felt completely overwhelmed? Like you're drowning in a sea of commitments you never really wanted to make? What if I told you that the key to reclaiming your entire life is hidden in one simple word? Just 2 letters. And no. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, oh great, another self-help guru telling me to be selfish, hear me out. This isn't about being mean. This isn't about hurting people. This is about something much more profound. This is about saving your own life. You see, when you stop saying yes to everything, your whole world doesn't just change. It transforms. It becomes yours again. Think about it. When was the last time you said yes to something and actually meant it? When was the last time you felt excited about a commitment instead of feeling that heavy weight in your stomach? I'm talking about that feeling you get when someone asks you to do something and your first thought is, oh God, not another thing. But then you smile and say, sure, I'd love to. Sound familiar? Here's what nobody tells you about constantly saying yes. It's not making you a good person. It's not making you more likable. It's slowly, systematically destroying your soul. And today we're going to change that. In the next 25 minutes, you're going to discover why saying no could literally be the most important skill you ever learn. You're going to understand why boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to a better life. And you're going to walk away with practical tools that will help you reclaim your time, your energy, and your peace of mind. But most importantly, you're going to understand that saying no isn't about being selfish. It's about being selective. So if you're tired of feeling like everyone else's emergency is your problem, if you're exhausted from being everyone's go-to person, if you're ready to stop living everyone else's life and start living your own, then this message is for you. Let's dive in. Let me paint you a picture. It's Sunday evening. You're sitting there looking at your calendar for the week ahead and you feel sick. Monday, coffee with Sarah even though you're exhausted and would rather stay home. Tuesday, extra project at work that you said yes to even though you're already behind. Wednesday, dinner with your partner's friends who you don't particularly enjoy. Thursday, volunteering for that charity event you committed to 6 months ago. Friday, happy hour with colleagues when all you want is to go home and rest. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a little voice is screaming, how did I get here? Here's how you got there. You got there because somewhere along the way you learned that saying yes makes you valuable. You learned that being available makes you important. You learned that being helpful makes you worthy. But here's the brutal truth nobody wants to admit. When you say yes to everything, you're actually saying no to yourself. Every single time. Think about it. When you said yes to that extra project at work, what did you say no to? Maybe it was saying no to having dinner with your family. Maybe it was saying no to that hobby you've been wanting to start. Maybe it was saying no to rest. When you said yes to that social event you didn't want to attend, what were you really saying no to? Your own preferences. Your own needs. Your own happiness. And here's where it gets really dark. Over time, this constant yes saying doesn't just exhaust you. It erases you. You start to lose touch with what you actually want. You start to forget what makes you happy. You become so focused on keeping everyone else satisfied that you completely lose sight of yourself. The physical toll is real, too. Chronic stress from overcommitment leads to headaches, insomnia, anxiety, and burnout. Your body is literally screaming at you to stop, but you keep pushing through because, well, you don't want to let anyone down. But here's the question nobody asks, what about letting yourself down? I want you to think about this for a moment. When was the last time you disappointed yourself to avoid disappointing someone else? Yesterday? Last week? This morning? And here's the really twisted part. The people who benefit from your constant yes saying? They're not thinking about your well-being. They're not losing sleep wondering if they're asking too much of you. They're just grateful that you're always available. Which means you become the reliable one. The dependable one. The one who never says no. And that sounds nice, doesn't it? Until you realize that being the one who never says no is just another way of saying the one with no boundaries. Let me share something with you. There's a reason why people pleasers often feel the most alone. It's because when you're constantly focused on what everyone else needs, you never learn to communicate what you need. And when you don't communicate your needs, people can't meet them, even if they wanted to. So you end up in this bizarre situation where you're surrounded by people but you feel completely unseen. You're constantly giving but you feel empty. You're always busy but you feel like you're not really living. That's the yes trap. And if you're feeling trapped right now, you're not alone. Now let me tell you something that might shock you. Saying no is not mean. It's not selfish. It's not rude. Saying no is revolutionary. When you say no to something that doesn't serve you, you're actually saying yes to something that does. When you say no to an energy drain, you're saying yes to an energy gain. When you say no to someone else's priority, you're saying yes to your own. This is what I call the no paradox. Every no is actually a yes in disguise. Let me give you some examples. When you say no to that extra project at work, you're saying yes to being present for your family. When you say no to that social event you're dreading, you're saying yes to your mental health. When you say no to lending money you can't afford to lose, you're saying yes to your financial security. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you start saying no to the right things, people don't respect you less. They respect you more. Think about it. Who do you respect more? The person who says yes to everything and seems scattered and overwhelmed? Or the person who is selective with their time and energy, and when they say yes, you know they really mean it? I'll give you a real example. I know a woman named Lisa. For years, Lisa was the go-to person in her friend group. Need someone to help you move? Call Lisa. Need a ride to the airport? Call Lisa. Need someone to listen to your problems at 2 in the morning? Call Lisa. Lisa was exhausted. She was resentful. She felt used. Then Lisa learned to say no. At first, people were surprised. Some were even annoyed. But you know what happened over time? Her friendships got deeper. The people who stayed were the people who actually cared about her, not just what she could do for them. And when Lisa did say yes to something, people knew it was because she genuinely wanted to be there. Lisa told me something profound. She said, when I stopped being available to everyone, I finally became available to myself. That's the power of no. It doesn't just protect your time and energy. It protects your authenticity. When you say no to things that don't align with who you are, you create space for things that do. When you say no to relationships that drain you, you create space for relationships that fulfill you. When you say no to activities that bore you, you create space for activities that inspire you. But here's the most powerful part. When you consistently say no to things that don't serve you, something magical happens. You start to remember who you actually are. You start to reconnect with your own desires, your own dreams, your own voice. Because here's what nobody tells you about people-pleasing. It's not just exhausting. It's silencing. When you're constantly focused on what everyone else wants, you stop hearing what you want. When you're constantly adapting to everyone else's needs, you lose touch with your own needs. But when you start saying no, when you start setting boundaries, you don't just reclaim your time. You reclaim yourself. And that's when your life really starts to change. All right, so you're convinced. You understand that saying no is powerful. You understand that boundaries are necessary. But now you're thinking, okay, but how do I actually do this without sounding like a jerk? Great question. Let's get practical. Here's the thing about saying no. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to give a detailed explanation. You don't need to provide alternatives. You just need to be kind, clear, and firm. Here's what this sounds like. Thank you for thinking of me, but I won't be able to do that. Period. Full stop. End of sentence. Now, your people-pleasing brain is probably screaming right now. But what if they ask why? What if they think I'm rude? What if they get upset? Here's the truth, if someone gets upset because you politely declined their request, that tells you everything you need to know about their respect for your boundaries. This one is huge. When someone asks you to do something, resist the urge to answer immediately. Instead, say this. Let me check my calendar and get back to you. This gives you time to think. Time to consider whether this commitment aligns with your values and priorities. Time to craft a thoughtful response instead of an automatic yes. And here's a secret, most people respect this approach. It shows that you take commitment seriously. Sometimes you want to help, but you can't do exactly what's being asked. In these cases, you can offer an alternative that works better for you. I can't take on that full project, but I'd be happy to review your final draft. I can't stay for the entire event, but I could stop by for an hour. I can't lend you the money, but I can help you brainstorm other solutions. This shows that you care, but you're also protecting your boundaries. Sometimes people don't accept your first no. They push. They negotiate. They guilt trip. When this happens, you become a broken record. You repeat your no calmly and consistently until they get the message. As I mentioned, I won't be able to do that. Like I said, it's not going to work for me. I understand you're disappointed, but my answer is still no. Remember, no is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your time and energy. For situations where you want to be extra gentle, try the sandwich method. Positive, no, positive. I really appreciate you thinking of me for this opportunity. Unfortunately, I won't be able to commit to it right now. I hope it goes wonderfully, and please keep me in mind for future projects that might be a better fit. This approach is kind but clear. You're not leaving the door open for negotiation, but you're also not burning bridges. Sometimes, the best way to say no to something is to explain what you're saying yes to instead. I've committed to spending more time with my family this year, so I won't be able to take on additional projects. I'm focusing on my health right now, so I'm not making any social commitments for the next month. This reframes your no as a positive choice rather than a rejection. Now, here's the most important part of all these strategies. You have to mean it. If you say no but your tone suggests you might change your mind, people will keep pushing. If you say no but then feel guilty and offer to help anyway, you're undermining your own boundaries. Saying no effectively requires conviction. It requires believing that your time and energy are valuable. It requires believing that you deserve to make choices about your own life. And here's something crucial: the more you practice saying no, the easier it becomes. Like any skill, boundary setting gets stronger with repetition. Start small. Say no to that email that doesn't require a response. Say no to that meeting that could have been an email. Say no to that social invitation you're not excited about. Each time you say no to something that doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to something that does. You're building the muscle of self-respect. You're proving to yourself that your needs matter. And that changes everything. Let's address the elephant in the room. The real reason most people struggle with saying no isn't that they don't know how. It's that they're terrified of the consequences. What if they think I'm selfish? What if they stop inviting me to things? What if they don't like me anymore? What if I hurt their feelings? What if they talk about me behind my back? These fears are real. They're valid. And they're mostly unfounded. Let me share something with you that might change your perspective. The people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries. The people who don't respect your boundaries don't truly care about you. I know that's harsh, but it's also liberating. Think about it this way. If someone only values you for what you can do for them, is that really a relationship you want to preserve? If someone gets angry at you for having limits, what does that tell you about their character? If someone tries to guilt you into saying yes, are they really looking out for your best interests? Here's a hard truth: some people will be upset when you start setting boundaries. And that's okay. Their upset doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're doing something different. And different can be uncomfortable for people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. But here's what else happens. The people who matter will adjust. They'll learn to respect your limits. They'll appreciate your honesty. They'll value your yes more because they know it's genuine. And you'll attract new people into your life. People who respect boundaries from the start. People who value you for who you are, not just what you can do. Let me tell you about a concept called boundary testing. When you first start setting boundaries, some people will test them. They'll push back. They'll try to guilt you. They'll act like your limits are unreasonable. This is actually normal. Think of it like training a puppy. When you first establish rules, the puppy tests them. They push against them to see if you really mean it. If you're consistent, they learn to respect the rules. If you give in, they learn that the rules don't really matter. People are similar. When you start setting boundaries, some will test them. If you hold firm, they'll learn to respect them. If you cave, they'll learn that your boundaries are negotiable. Here's another reframe that helps. When you say no to preserve your mental health, your energy, your time, you're not being mean to them. You're being kind to yourself. And being kind to yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give what you don't have. You can't take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself. When you set boundaries, you're ensuring that when you do say yes, you can show up fully. You can be present. You can be engaged. You can be your best self. Here's something else to consider. By not setting boundaries, you might actually be enabling unhealthy behavior in others. When you always say yes, you might be preventing someone from learning to solve their own problems. You might be stopping them from developing their own support network. You might be making them overly dependent on you. Sometimes saying no is the kindest thing you can do. For them and for you. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. Changing patterns that have been years in the making is never easy. You might feel guilty at first. You might worry that you're being too harsh. You might second-guess yourself. That's normal. That's part of the process. But here's what I want you to remember. Your feelings matter. Your time matters. Your energy matters. Your peace of mind matters. You matter. And anyone who makes you feel bad for recognizing that isn't someone you need in your life. Now let me tell you what happens when you really commit to this. When you stop saying yes to everything and start being selective with your time and energy. The changes are profound. When you're not constantly reacting to everyone else's needs, you have space to think about your own. You start to remember what you actually enjoy. What energizes you. What matters to you. It's like coming back to life. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but hear me out. When you stop being available to everyone, the people in your life have to step up. They can't just rely on you for everything. And the relationships that survive this transition? They become deeper, more balanced, more authentic. When you're not scattered across a dozen different commitments, you can focus on the things that really matter. Your work improves. Your personal projects move forward. You make real progress on your goals. There's something magical that happens when you stop carrying everyone else's problems. When you stop feeling responsible for everyone else's happiness. When you stop trying to be everything to everyone. You feel free. People start seeing you differently. Instead of the person who always says yes, you become the person who means what they say. When you commit to something, people know you're genuinely invested. Your yes becomes more valuable because it's not automatic. When you're not overwhelmed with obligations you don't care about, you have bandwidth for opportunities you do care about. You can say yes to the things that align with your values and goals. Much of our anxiety comes from overcommitment. When you stop taking on more than you can handle, you stop feeling constantly behind, constantly overwhelmed, constantly stressed. But here's the most important change of all. You start to like yourself again. When you're constantly saying yes to things you don't want to do, a part of you starts to resent yourself. You become frustrated with your inability to stand up for your own needs. But when you start setting boundaries, when you start honoring your own limits, you develop self-respect. And when you respect yourself, others follow suit. Let me share a story. I know a man named David who was the classic yes person. He worked 60-hour weeks, volunteered for every committee, and was always available to help friends and family. David was miserable. He was exhausted. He felt like he was living everyone else's life except his own. Then David started saying no. First, he said no to non-essential meetings at work. Then he said no to social events he wasn't excited about. Then he said no to taking on other people's responsibilities. People were shocked. Some were annoyed. A few even made comments about David changing. But you know what happened? David's work performance improved because he could focus on his core responsibilities. His relationships became more meaningful because he was present when he chose to be. He started a side business he'd been dreaming about for years. He took up hiking. He learned to cook. David told me, I thought saying no would make my life smaller. Instead, it made my life mine. That's what happens when you stop saying yes to everything. Your life doesn't get smaller. It gets more yours. You stop living everyone else's priorities and start living your own. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. And that's when everything changes. All right, so you're ready to make this change. You understand the power of no. You see the benefits of boundaries. But now you're thinking, where do I even start? Here's your roadmap. Take inventory of your current commitments. Look at your calendar, your to-do list, your ongoing obligations. For each item, ask yourself, does this energize me or drain me? Does this align with my values and goals? Am I doing this because I want to or because I feel I should? If I were starting fresh today, would I choose to take this on? Be honest. Brutally honest. Identify your top 3 priorities right now. Maybe it's your health, your family, and your career. Maybe it's your education, your creative pursuits, and your relationships. Whatever they are, write them down. From now on, when someone asks you to do something, you filter it through these priorities. If it doesn't serve at least one of your top 3 priorities, it's probably a no. Start with low-stakes situations. Say no to that email that doesn't require a response. Decline that meeting that isn't essential. Skip that social event you're not excited about. Practice the words. Practice the feeling. Get comfortable with the discomfort. Tell someone you trust about your commitment to setting better boundaries. Ask them to hold you accountable. Ask them to remind you that it's okay to say no. Having support makes this process so much easier. When you start saying no, you will feel guilty. That's normal. That's expected. That's temporary. When the guilt comes up, remind yourself. You're not responsible for everyone else's happiness. You can't pour from an empty cup. Saying no to one thing means saying yes to something else. Your needs matter too. Every time you successfully set a boundary, celebrate it. Acknowledge that you did something difficult. Recognize that you chose yourself. This positive reinforcement will help you continue the pattern. Remember, this is a practice, not a perfection. You don't need to become a boundary-setting expert overnight. You just need to start. Each no gets easier. Each boundary gets stronger. Each choice to prioritize yourself builds the muscle of self-respect. Here's your challenge for today. Before you go to bed tonight, I want you to say no to one thing. Just one thing. Maybe it's a request that's sitting in your inbox. Maybe it's a social obligation you're not excited about. Maybe it's just saying no to checking your email for the rest of the evening. Whatever it is, practice the feeling of choosing yourself. Practice the power of no. And notice how it feels. Notice the relief. Notice the space it creates. Notice the sense of control. That feeling? That's what it feels like to live your own life. Let me leave you with this. Your life is not a dress rehearsal. This is it. This is your one chance to live authentically, to honor your needs, to create a life that feels yours. And you can't do that if you're constantly living everyone else's priorities. You can't do that if you're always saying yes when you mean no. You can't do that if you're more worried about disappointing others than you are about disappointing yourself. The power to change your life has been inside you all along. It's been waiting for you to recognize it, to claim it, to use it. And that power is the power to choose. When you stop saying yes to everything, you start saying yes to the right things. When you stop being available to everyone, you start being available to yourself. When you stop living reactively, you start living intentionally. This isn't about becoming mean or selfish or uncaring. This is about becoming selective. Selective with your time. Selective with your energy. Selective with your commitments. Selective with your life. Because you deserve a life that feels good. You deserve relationships that energize you. You deserve work that fulfills you. You deserve to be happy. And happiness isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose. Every day. With every decision. With every yes and every no. So starting today, I challenge you to choose differently. Choose yourself. Choose your values. Choose your priorities. Choose your life. Remember, when you stop saying yes to everything, your life doesn't get smaller. It gets bigger. It gets better. It gets yours. And that's when everything changes. Forever. Thank you for listening. Now go out there and start saying no.